Hey there, welcome to another episode of Gimme Empathy, a podcast about getting to know people and their habits and their thoughts and values on life and stuff. I'm Scott Mercer, I'm your host. I'm getting over my sore throat, I'm feeling a fair bit better. Yeah, sorry about my ramblings about waiting rooms and Channel 9 and all that from last week's episode. This week on the podcast, we've got Jeremy Neale. If you've gone out and seen music in Brisbane in the last 10 years or so, you've probably seen one of Jeremy's bands at some point. At one point, he seemed to be pretty much everywhere with his bands. I first met Jeremy 7 or 8 years ago. He was drumming for a band called Mount Augustus. And this podcast came about because he and I reconnected recently. He had a gig at a bar called Barbara in Fortitude Valley here in Brisbane that he was playing, and I hadn't seen him for quite a while before that, and we had a very good catch-up. I told him about some of the stuff that had been going on in my life this year, and he was, and even though he had like a lot of people to talk to that night, as he always does at his gigs, he was a very good friend to me that night. After his gig, Jeremy did a DJ set. His DJ name is DJ Briz Springsteen, and we had a really good chat while we were behind the decks, and he was playing songs off Spotify, off his phone. It was really fun. I think I really get why people DJ now, even if you're just playing stuff off your phone. There's something wonderful about seeing joyous groups of young people dancing with each other because of the button you pushed. At one point, Jeremy was playing Dancing Queen, and I'd had a few drinks at that point, and I accidentally knocked the auxiliary cord out of his phone, and the music cut out. But such was the mood in the room that everybody in the bar just kept singing along, even while the music had cut off for a good 30 seconds until we could fumble the cord back into place. It was really pretty remarkable. In this episode, we talk about striking a balance between pursuing what you love and having the rest of your life generally in order, which is a tricky thing. We talk about coffee and alcohol, talk about redefining success and fears. We talk about mental health a bit. For the third week in a row, we touch on suicide in this episode. So if you don't want to hear about that, maybe skip the second half of this conversation. Also, at the end, Jeremy plays a song from one of his bands, Velociraptor. And we also have a bit of a cameo from a guest who came over while Jeremy was tuning. Screenfeeder's own Kellie Lloyd came by. She was borrowing my bass amp for a Screenfeeder gig on the day we were recording. And the mics were still running. Kellie didn't know that Jeremy was going to be there. And I got Kellie's permission to include this little snippet, which I thought was kind of cute. This wasn't the first time I'd interviewed Jeremy Neale for a podcast. I've not told you this before, but Gimme Empathy is in fact the third podcast I've attempted to get off the ground. So far, this is definitely the furthest I've gotten with any of them. But we talk a bit about the first one I tried to start and the first long-form conversation I had with Jeremy. There's a bit of bird chatter on this podcast, more so than usual. So I guess beware of the birds. If you hate birds, anyway, here's Jeremy Neale.
And code for taking a break is, would you like some more tea?
Yeah.
Yes, it's good code.
I mean, yeah, that's when we normally go to the bathroom to do lines.
Yeah, sweet, awesome. And then you had a really hectic second half of the podcast.
Hey, Jezza.
Hey, Scott.
How do we know each other?
Well, look, see, I've got like all the files of all of our meetings in like a folder, but then something happened and all the dates of those disappeared. But I want to guess that the first time that we met was at, I think, what is now Crowbar for Dork Club for the show, 4ZZZ related show with the Go-Go Fish and me and friends. Was that right?
I think we met a bit before that. I remember that was definitely the first and possibly only show we've ever played together that Ellie put on.
Ellie, yeah.
Yeah. That was a really fun night, actually, and I met my hairdresser, Amy Crow, there.
Whoa.
Well, I mean, I haven't had my hair cut in like a year, but when I went to see her for years to get my hair cut because she had like a home hair cutting business. I can't actually remember that this is you, but I know it by circumstances. I'm pretty sure it had to have been you. It was at a Mount Augustus gig.
Yes.
At X and Y Bar.
Yes.
So Mount Augustus was a Brisbane band. It was Cam Smith's band that I'd kind of been a bit obsessed with for a few years. And I knew Cam a bit, and I knew Dan, his bass player, Dan Denton. And so I remember going to see this X and Y gig, and afterwards I was helping the band take stuff to the car. And I don't specifically remember it being you, but I know in retrospect it has to be, because I remember the drummer, which would have been you, and Dan talking a lot about Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, right, probably. The story checks out now.
And you would have been in the band at the time.
Sweet.
So yeah, it had to have been you. And then like I would see you out and about when I went to see gigs, because like at that time I think I was going to see gigs like 2 or 3 nights a week, and I'd just run into you and you'd kind of introduce me to all these bands and people and stuff. You and Dan really introduced me to a lot of interesting indie rock bands around.
Oh, it's awesome. Being social has finally paid off. I think that was like probably, I think we were probably similarly going out a lot, but like you and I were probably both out. Then if you were going out 2 or 3 nights a week, I was probably doing the same that time as well.
Yeah.
It was a very active time.
They used to have a lot of bands on at Oh Hello.
Yes.
And you booked that night for a while, didn't you?
Very briefly. I was the Oh Hello booker for about 2 months,
yeah.
I think. And then I realized it's actually really stressful to book even one night of music a week in Brisbane in a venue that large.
Now, this isn't even the first podcast that I've recorded with you.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there was a podcast I was trying to get off the ground for ages and kept putting it off. And it was called Only Talking Sense, and it was sort of an oral history of Brisbane music. And I recorded 6 episodes, finished 2 of them, and broadcast 2 on my radio show. Yours was one of them.
Yeah.
Broadcast it once or twice. And then like stuff just kept coming up and I couldn't put as much time into it as I wanted, because I was really a perfectionist about it. I wanted it really awesome. I edited all this music into it and stuff. I put it off for so long that eventually Saya Vogel came on and started her own podcast that was of a very similar nature, and she did it better than I ever could. So I was like, okay, I'll just start this one that requires much less research, much less planning, just talk to people about
minimal
shit.
editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, but I was listening to a bit of that first one we did this morning because that was 4 years ago now.
That's crazy.
That we talked on that one. And it's so interesting to see what's changed since then. So like, I think at the end of that one, you were talking about kind of your work-life balance and trying to get that more in line with how you want your life to ultimately be. And like you were hoping for a big publishing break in your music and just putting everything on credit cards.
It was a nasty time. It was a really nasty time.
So like how has your life changed since then?
Dramatically for the better, I feel. I was very much in the thick of, I guess, surviving under like enormous financial pressure and self-imposed goals, I guess. And what I was aiming for and what I did mention in that podcast is something I feel like I've achieved now, perhaps at the detriment to kicking goals constantly, but the one goal that I am kicking is the life goal of balance. So that's come around really nicely, I guess. Now I'm no longer in debt like I was, it was a lot of a burden to carry, especially not knowing how you're going to get out of it, because music is so it's unpredictable. But now, I just work 3 days a week in a job I really love, which is great. I do music, but it's not rushed anymore. It's like probably the opposite of rushed, really. It's probably take too long. Because
you used to be Johnny everywhere in terms of bands.
Yeah.
You were the hardest working man in Brisbane music in like 7 bands or something ridiculous. You've definitely, over the last couple of years, it seems like you've been releasing a bit less stuff, but taking the time to perfect the beat like Dr. Dre.
Yeah, that's right. He's my number one guy. The only doctor I listen to.
So what put you on this right path?
I guess it's when life isn't working, I don't know, like when your enjoyment of life is not there, you've got to kind of reevaluate hectically. And I think I must have got a little bit of space to be able to analyze my life a little bit and then pick out the factors that weren't working and then work to eliminate them.
So what wasn't working?
Well, I mean, work wasn't working because I didn't enjoy what I was doing.
And was this just like a generic minimum wage kind of thing?
Yes, definitely around the last time we would have spoken, it would have been for sure. And I would resent having to go to work. And so that had to be the number one thing I figured out first. That was like kind of building up from the beginning. It was kind of starting over and being like, okay, what are the foundations of a good life? And that was like, I got to get work right because I'm going to have to go to work. It's got to be good. So I kind of was looking for something that served a purpose so I could balance out going to work. Because, if you work for some kind of general capitalist kind of company, you resent it because you don't see the point. So it's taking your time, it's giving you not much back, and you can't see the overall purpose to it. So I knew I had to get into something that was like a job that would exist if money wasn't a thing, like a job that, like a socialist kind of job,
So one that directly has a benefit to society.
Totally.
It's not just selling some shit.
Totally. And so I found my way into carers work, which was great for that because I could balance out, that need for something greater than just making cash.
Did you have to do a training for that?
I didn't. I was very fortunate that I ended up being just the right personality fit for what a family was looking for. And so I was doing carers work, which is fantastic work. And then I guess from there, I ended up and where I am now, which is working for the Starlight Foundation, which is once again the kind of job that I can see the purpose for, and therefore that work section of my life, which had been a problem for so long, is no longer a problem because I really enjoy what I do.
What do you do for the Starlight Foundation?
I work for a program of theirs called Livewire, which is like a program for teenagers in hospital. So it's a lot of creatively based kind of approach to, getting rid of boredom in hospital and also kind of creating a community amongst other teenagers that are in hospital. So we do everything from painting, arts and crafts. We do guitar lessons and we write songs, or we'll just play video games sometimes, which is also excellent. But it's all about whatever that teenager wants to do, essentially, because everybody else in that hospital environment is telling them what they need to do, and we're supposed to be there as part of, well, what would you like to do? And we'll make it happen kind of vibe.
That sounds like it would be so rewarding.
It's super rewarding, and it's super made the rest of my life fall into place, I guess.
So how did the rest of it happen? So you're in a job where you only need to work 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So with 4 days a week to spend on music, that's still a lot of time. You could be getting out there, being in all the bands.
Yes.
So what do you do with the other 4 days of your week?
I try and keep a pretty reasonable exercise regime. So over the maybe when we last met, I was probably doing yoga, but I've kind of stepped up the game to the point that now I'm doing yoga teacher training as well. I guess that's a foundation of balance to me, is to keep that exercise happening in there. I could definitely be doing more music stuff. I always think about music a lot. I think that's the thing. And I think you'll understand that it takes up a disproportionate amount of headspace versus actual doing time.
Definitely.
Because I love to daydream about music and I love ideas. I love two things. I'm addicted to daydreaming, route ideas, and then I also love the end of the line, which is the sense of accomplishment that you feel when you do finish that great idea. But the 10% of the idea that is the idea, and the 10% that is, that accomplishment, there's the 80% of grind in the middle.
Yeah.
And the grind is not something that I excel at. I'll do it and I'll get there eventually. And I will offer myself lots of rewards along the way for doing something. It's like, Jeremy, if you just send this one email, then you can play Star Wars Battlefront for 4 hours. So that's where a lot of my week goes. And I guess, so, there's work, there's exercise, there's Star Wars Battlefront, and then there's, the intricate system of rewards that allow me to do things that I should do.
Just with that 10% of accomplishment that's part of the creative process, how long does that last for you?
That is a good question. I think it's always there and you can access it, but you've got to think about what you've done to do it, you know? And because you're geared, or I'm geared, and maybe you are too, to always think about what's next.
Yeah.
So you don't spend enough time thinking about what you've done. But if I think about things that I've done, I'm like, yeah, that was stupid, and I'm really proud of that. Like even, yeah, I don't know, just like the concept of my new best friend T-Rax. He's like a dinosaur billionaire who's also a DJ. Like I look back at T-Rax whenever I see the poster, because I've hung the poster in my cupboard at home, and I'm like, you know what, you did something good, Jezza. But it's not. I don't think we take enough time to appreciate what we've done. And the good of what we've done. We always, if we do spend any time looking at what we've done, we probably look at the bad of what we've done.
Yeah, you just look back at things that weren't quite perfect and cringe, rather than thinking of the stuff that worked out well and go, yeah,
yes,
good job, self.
Totally. So it's like, all right, okay, well, what's next all the time. And I think I'm still inclined to daydream and think about what's next and not spend as much time with the sense of accomplishment. But I'm actively trying to change that by doing things less erratically, I guess, which is where I'm at now with music, I guess.
How do you mean less erratically?
Just more focused. It's like I'd almost like be sick of an idea before I put it out because I was so busy about thinking about what was coming after it.
I totally get that. Like if there's a new project, that I want to start, I have to start it like within 3 months.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just totally lose passion for it.
Yep.
Like if with this podcast, it'd been in my brain for a few months, but if I hadn't got it off the ground before I did start it, it would have died.
Totally.
Just totally. And that's happened with dozens of projects over the years.
Yeah. And you keep them in a stockpile. You're like, that's something I could do. But it's not often that you'll go back to them once that kind of initial excitement's passed.
But it's kind of a poisoned garbage bin as well, because you always remember about those projects you never started. You'll get some reminder of them and be like, oh, I never got around to doing that.
Yeah.
Man, I fucking suck. I didn't even, couldn't even start that.
Well, and you'll see that too when, like, you know, when friends of yours will send you an idea that they think is really great, and they're like, maybe they've done a demo of a song, and then, you know, a few years later, and that never came out, and you're like, oh, why? That was a genius song. Like, I would have happily taken that song. It could have done me wonders. But it never saw the light of day because it obviously got to that period where they were no longer excited about it and they were desensitized to the initial magic of it and never put it out. And lots of people have great, like friends of mine that are filmmakers, have amazing ideas for films, or short films, or little bits of skits or whatever, and they never see the light of day either. And it's such a shame because there's so much potential there. And think about all those ideas out of all the creators you know that never see the light of day, and it's just nuts.
I think sometimes that thing of sharing it with friends is actually a really important part in keeping yourself motivated, because if other people know what you're doing and if they're enthusiastic about it, I think that can be a huge boost.
Yes.
Like there was a music project that I did a lot of work on last year after being really inspired by a local band that kind of started up. And I was like, oh man, why aren't I making music like that? Like not even stylistically the same, but just with the same ethos.
Yeah.
And so like I recorded an EP on my own, and then this year I'm putting it together as a live band.
Yeah.
And even though it was a year ago I'd last worked on it, just having other people super enthusiastic about it has entirely resuscitated it.
That's awesome. It's like being surrounded by life coaches.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants. I just want a team of life coaches.
So do we want to go to one of your prepared topics, Jeremy?
Well, what did I write down? I wrote down a few things. We can take it where you want to take it. You know, I thought that we could still touch on the wonderful world of everyday drugs, i.e. caffeine and alcohol. Because you can save then the hardcore drugs for maybe like a real Hollywood bad boy that you're going to get here eventually.
Yeah,
you know?
I'll have to choose from my many Hollywood bad boy friends. It'll be hard. But
You almost exclusively keep Hollywood bad boy friends. So good luck choosing.
I mean, you're my most common friend that I still have. All right, so what is your relationship? Let's start with caffeine. Do you drink coffee?
I love coffee. It's a bad relationship though, because I rely on coffee. And I've always known that even though it does wonderful things for me, that I have to give it up, but I can't. Except I can and have, but only through getting a terrible winter bug this year. And you know when you get totally just mowed down and coffee's the last thing you want? You ever been there?
I don't really drink coffee.
True.
But
you never built up the painful addiction.
no, I associate. There was one period of my life that was very stressful for me, and I used coffee to get through that.
Yep.
And so I had negative associations with drinking coffee.
That's great. You know it's the devil. You already know.
I am into tea now though, which is the same. It's caffeine, but it doesn't taste the same, obviously. No. But okay, this is something I don't really identify with. What is this feeling of being wiped out, but you can't? So why can't you drink coffee when you're feeling like that?
I don't know. I think it's like, it's your body telling you that all the things that are bad for you, it doesn't want a bar of them. And it finally has, because it's demanding all your attention because you're not feeling well. It's telling you, hey, only put good things in. So I haven't had any coffee lately. I haven't had any alcohol lately. And that's kind of been the break that I need to get out of that routine as well. Because I would start every day with a triple shot long black, which is a beautiful kickstart to the day. Gets you really psyched on just life in general and gives you wonderful ideas, lots of ideas. It really speeds me up a lot, which is great for idea generation. But that speed that I get on never ceases. And then I get to the nighttime and I'm like still thinking a lot.
Still from the same triple shot at breakfast?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think by then it's not the caffeine that's driving me anymore, because that's probably long tapered off. It's just that I think, like, I always think of headspace as like what's like an avalanche, or what's the thing when you get like a snowball at the top of the mountain and it rolls and becomes like the avalanche kind of thing.
Snowballs.
Snowballs. It's snowballs. That's we got it. Thanks, man. Yeah. So I feel like that's like a headspace thing, and I feel like coffee speeds it up, and there's no way to take it back unless you have a drink, and then that calms you back down. So you're getting that kind
uppers
of cycle.
and downers.
Uppers and downers. And it's a very accepted form of uppers and downers because everybody has a morning coffee. Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have a glass of wine at night. And so you do get in that kind of, that cycle that is very hard to break.
What was the problem with that?
Well, the problem with that is because I feel like when it's coffee for me, because I'm very caffeine sensitive, it makes me feel wonderful and energized. But it does kind of make me kind of stuck in my head, I guess, because you're thinking a lot. You're not really experiencing your world anymore. And I guess that's just detrimental to enjoying life, because that goes back to that like what's next process that we were talking about before. Every moment of your day kind of becomes like a what's next kind of thing.
So you can't calm down and take stock and smell the flowers?
No. I mean, actively, that's why I was doing a lot of, like, yoga was kind of the other reset as well, which is great. And you would kind of be like, well, I'll have a coffee, so I've got the energy to smash that yoga class. And then the yoga class would kind of reset you a bit. So it was kind of, there's lots of ups and downs and where you find them, I guess, is the kind of thing.
Was there a moment when you decided to cut coffee cold turkey, or did you slowly reduce your intake?
I've tried multiple times over the years to get rid of coffee. And it feels interesting to seriously talk about coffee, because it's not something many people think of as a problem.
Caffeine is an addictive drug.
It's very addictive. It's out of control.
Just because it's legal doesn't mean it doesn't have the same effects and doesn't have the same problems as illegal ones do.
Yes. But it's just that thing where, I tried to cut it a couple of times. And I'd get maybe a week and a half in, and then you'd be like, I'm out of the cycle. I could have a casual coffee, and then you're right back in there.
So were you having withdrawal symptoms?
Yeah, withdrawals from coffee is actually severe. It's like, I mean, the headaches is very common. Everyone knows about that. But you're very fatigued as well. And I feel like last time I tried to give up coffee, I was like almost like panic attacky for the first couple of days as well. So it's actually crazy. And so, shout out to anybody out there in listening land who also struggles with coffee and giving it up.
And how did you manage to kick it this time?
Just because I got sick.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And you didn't feel like it when you were sick.
And it got me out of the terrible withdrawal phase.
Well, next time you're back on the wagon, which may or may not happen.
Let's hope that I got self-control, but if I don't,
just go into work to the infectious diseases ward. Don't wear gloves. Just breathe in all the kids' germs.
You're right. Get the flu, because I never get the flu shots. I should get the flu shots. Do you get the flu shots?
No.
Because I don't want any extra needles that I don't have to have.
I don't think I've ever had the flu.
Wow.
Like people say they get really sick and normally people are babies, aren't they? Normally they just have a cold when they say they have the flu, right? I get colds a few times a year, but I don't think I've ever had like a flu where you can't get out of bed.
You didn't get the bird flu?
No, I did not get the bird flu.
Do you avoid birds or?
I don't avoid them. There's one chirping right now. I don't know if you can hear that.
It knew. That bird knew.
I have a bird friend at work. I eat lunch in my car out the front of work, and there's a little butcher bird that hops by my car every day at lunchtime. And sometimes it even comes and sits on my side mirror.
Well, you know what? That's beautiful, because it's kind of like, like a Mary Poppins kind of moment, where like the animated birds kind of fly in, but you don't even need animated birds.
No, it's 3-dimensional and everything.
That's amazing.
Okay, let's talk about alcohol now then. So you went for a while where you quit alcohol as well, didn't you?
I've definitely had times where I've taken quite extended leaves from it. I did over the summer after I did that Regurgitator support tour where I had a couple of weeks of hitting it very heavily.
Do they still hit it hard, the Regurgitator people?
Quan doesn't. He's very clean living now. But I don't know how hard the other guys were hitting it, actually. It's hard to tell, because when you're hitting it hard, you don't really notice what's going on around you.
That's true. I think Saya mentioned on her podcast that they do some sort of magic B12 supplements before they go on stage and gives you like a huge high of energy.
That's huge and also believable. Yeah, they had an array of like their backstage setup was very nice. It was like, fruits and vegetables. That's what I'd like backstage.
Yeah.
But you can't get those until you get to the big leagues.
Until you can set your own rider.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not just, a 6-pack of Coopers or whatever.
Essentially. So, I mean, during that period, because it was this thing where it seemed an achievable tour, and then simultaneously Velociraptor also had to tour at the same time. So there was just like multiple shows. There was like one show in Melbourne where we were playing a Raptors show, and then 40 minutes later, I was supposed to be on the other side of town playing a solo show.
Wow.
Regurgitator. So it was just very stressful, and I chose to drink my way through it.
Well, historically, Velociraptor are a hard drinking band.
It's true.
Like back in the day when I first saw you, like 7-8 years ago, there'll be those shows at Oh Hello. I remember where you guys would be ordering beers from on stage mid-song, and like people would crowd surf trays of beers to you. You'd all be downing them on stage. They were wild, wild shows.
It was a beautiful time, and I think that kind of PR is like the thing that's kind of helped us tour. Like that tour that was on at the end of last year was a Sailor Jerry sponsored tour. Sailor Jerry were flying us around for Sailor Jerry themed shows. The tour we'd done before that was Jack Daniels flying us around and putting on shows. And then the tour we did before that, I think, was probably a Sailor Jerry's one as well. So, the pluses to that is we've been able to tour as a band. And alcohol is a wonderful thing if it's working for you and in moderation. I just got off the end of that tour and felt terrible. And I was like, that's it, taking a break. I didn't know how long the break was going to be. The break ended up being 14 weeks. 14 is not a powerful number. Or maybe it is, if it's your lucky number. But it wasn't set out to be 14 weeks. It just was. And then I decided, okay, it's all right. Jezza, you can have a drink now. I had a drink. And then I think up until when I got sick now, I'd probably had at least a glass of wine 6 out of 7 nights a week since getting back on it. So it's a hard thing to balance.
How did that align with where you were with coffee?
They are, they're a pair. They're like the original buddy cop film.
So that was when you were doing the triple shot in the morning, glass of wine at night?
Yeah, totally.
Right. So you're off coffee still?
I'm off coffee. I'm off, I got this wonderful peppermint tea that you poured me. Thank you. And I'm going to try and maintain, but we'll see. I have faith.
And so now that you're off coffee, are you still doing the nightly wine?
No, it's out as well. I feel like they coexist, because wine kind of makes you slightly sleepier the next day than you would have been. So there's one way out of that. And that's the vicious cycle of the everyday drugs.
More tea?
More tea. this is a good podcast. I really enjoyed. Especially Angela's one is just great too. It was so interesting, man, with like life in Japan.
Oh man, she's had some. I still don't understand the TV show she's on.
It's so bizarre, but excellent. So
yeah, thanks. So like I don't know how interesting it is for other people to just listen to the lives of my friends, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Like I'm mostly doing this for me, really.
well, yeah, as we said with merchandise, we're just doing it for ourselves. So, but I think that I think there's that thing though where like everybody has a story to tell, so it's just good to let them tell it.
I think it's also important, like to hear from normal people who aren't like a lot of podcasts. The interview podcasts are about the mega successful, they're about successful comedians and musicians and actors and stuff, and there's that survivor's bias in that, when someone's on Maron telling you about how they were, I struggled in Hollywood for years and then I made it big, and it's a really interesting story, but like for every one person who got to be on Maron eventually, like there are probably 50,000 people who never made it.
Yeah, totally.
And who just kind of toiled away. Maybe who didn't even, they didn't necessarily totally fuck up, but they just made a small living doing what they loved.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in those stories because I think there's something a little bit unhealthy for society to only hear the mega success stories.
Totally.
It just sends these unreasonable expectations.
Yes.
I think. Not that you're not a successful person.
Look, we're all successful, you just got to define success and, what do you want in your life, Scott,
Have you redefined success in terms of your music career in the last 4 years since the last podcast?
Definitely.
How did you define it back then? Which was, I think it was just before your second EP came out. And I think In Stranger Times, the single had just come out.
Oh, yeah, sweet. I mean, that was a good place to be. The world was at my feet, an undeniable pop banger. And I guess because I was in the thick of it, a lot of my motivations and what I wanted to do was I just wanted to be making music for a living. Like that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to have to do any other work. And so what success was that if you just get to be you for a living. Crazy. Except it's like a commodified version of you. It's like how do you make yourself into a commodity that works, I guess, if you want to be that.
And even that goal these days is very, very, very difficult to achieve for a musician.
Yeah.
To have your sole income be from music.
Definitely.
And that's not where you ended up.
No, not at all. But it's great because what success ended up being, or what my definition of success now is being in a place where I can do whatever I want to do. And that's exactly where I am. And that's exciting. I mean, it takes me longer to do things than it would if I was an artist that was very well funded, because then I wouldn't slowly pay off studio bills and, slowly pay off bills as they come through. It does allow you to achieve things faster, I guess, maybe. Or maybe you would just spread yourself too thin and do everything because you could. Now I have to be very discerning as to what I'll do. And I do it well. It just takes longer than it might have otherwise, I guess.
Did you end up getting a publishing deal with anyone?
I ended up I have a deal that is more of a licensing kind of thing. I was offered a traditional publishing deal and I didn't take it. I would take one now, but yeah, mostly somebody looks after my catalog of work, a publishing company called Gaga Music. And, I've had some success through publishing avenues, but I never did get the deal, I guess.
Why did you turn that offer down for the publishing deal?
That's a good question too. I don't really know. It was kind of like, I don't know if like the structure of the releases worked well or something. I have a real thing with, or had a real thing at that time with like very much doing things on my own terms, I guess. And so, yeah, I guess I avoided it because I figured there was more, more vested interest perhaps in like my release schedule or, being tied to something. So
that they weren't necessarily going to fit in with the rest of your musical goals?
perhaps. I think at that time I was a little bit too scattered and I wanted to do too many different things. And and it was kind of like, oh, I think it was like a 3-album kind of thing. And where I'm at now, I really haven't put out much stuff. I've put out, officially to the world 2 solo EPs. I just didn't have I didn't know if I was going to be a person who puts out an album a year or not, And I'm clearly not because, it's 2017 now and here comes the debut solo album this year. So, a lot's changed though. A lot has changed. Now my approach, I get to do exactly what I want to do, which is great. But I probably don't want to wildly throw money at music. I'd like music to be self-sustainable. So that's how I'm running it now. If it's not self-sustainable, I essentially don't do it. So that wacky idea that I have, even though it has led to great things before, like I put out an April Fool's song in maybe 2014 called Stallion Rider. Great power metal number. But it actually cost me a bit of money to record it because the only person I was recording with was somebody Sean Cook working in like a professional studio at the time. And so even doing, those kind of joke songs cost you a bit of money. So those kind of things I pull myself back on occasionally now,
Because wasn't that going to be a full band at some point?
Yeah, and that was the thing. That was the period of time where like many ideas, wanting to do too much. The world was full of things I could do, I guess, and I kind of wanted to do them all. And then that was just hectic, really. So those things never eventuated because it was that thing about the 10%, the first 10% of the initial idea is like very exciting, but the grind to make it happen is too much. Though that sense of accomplishment at the end would have been a real beauty. Would have been beautiful.
What are you afraid of, Jeremy?
That's a huge question. I'm definitely afraid of death. Should we start there? Or do you want a list of things I'm afraid of?
Yeah, let's make a list of 3 to start with.
Yeah, death is number 1. Second's probably having a disproportionate amount of my life that's not self-directed, because I really love to choose what I do with my time. And when I don't, I feel that I end up resenting my days. So yeah, I guess it's that. Death, lack of freedom. I don't know if you have a fear of, like, there's always that, I guess it's a fear of being stuck with guilt for things that might have happened in your life that you could never make amends for as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, perhaps there's somebody in your past who is no longer alive and you can never fix that kind of thing. So that's kind of a fear for unresolved personal relationships, I guess.
So do you have a fear of that happening, or have you had that happen and you are feeling guilt for whatever?
No, I think there's also like a lot of things you can put on yourself that don't necessarily, relate to things that happen as well. I'm not what I'm trying to say. But, I feel like, there's like things that you can't amend. Like when I was like 10 years old, my father committed suicide, and I feel like there's like an unresolved kind of thing there because you'll never have any more conversations with that person. That person no longer exists. So I think like taking that into, future relationships that you have with people or people that you've had in the past, and not necessarily knowing if you've resolved everything with people around you. It's very ambiguous. I'm sorry, we're just listing things that were fears. I think that that's a fear. I fear like potentially unresolved things that you aren't aware of with people in your life. And then if they no longer exist, then you'll never know. And then you didn't get a chance to fix it.
Is that a fear that you think everyone has, or was that just put into focus by your own experience with your father?
I don't know, Scott, is that a fear that you have? Do you have a fear of like maybe any like of your, like have you ever, is there anybody in your life you ever wanted to make amends with that you thought, I should probably say, sorry for this thing that happened, but...
Not really. I'm a vengeful person.
Yeah, sweet. That's great. So then maybe it's my early experiences that have made me very hyper aware of like just wanting to make sure that you do no harm in your travels, I guess.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I've got a younger sister. And she's a legend. She's got married recently. It was really beautiful. Great wedding.
I don't know if you've ever talked about this with her, but do you think she has the same feeling?
Quite possibly. I don't know, because I think it's kind of one of those things that isn't spoken about, as in like just in general. Like, you know, like life is good now, so let's celebrate how good life is. And everybody's kind of battles with those kind of things is such a like a solitary kind of quest, you know what I mean? Like everybody's like, you know, it's like anybody's like mental health quest is generally, it's something they kind of take up on their own. They ask for help when they're ready to ask for help, but it's something that they, you know, and I feel like those kind of heavy issues are things that just aren't openly spoken about.
Please stop me if you don't feel comfortable answering anything I'm going to ask. But did your father have mental health issues?
Yes, yeah. Some suspected bipolar. So, yeah, it was like a wild ride of a childhood, really, I feel. But from it, I turned out all right, so it's good. But there's definitely, because of that, it's been a, you know, it's like a lot of, it's just been a big journey, I feel, you know. It's been a big journey to being good.
Being 10 years old when your father died, how did that immediately affect like how you interacted with others, like your friendships, your family relationships?
It was kind of a complete reset in a lot of ways.
What kind of kid were you before it happened, to start with?
I think I was variants of the same kid. I think that afterwards I put a lot more value on humor than I had before. And I don't know if that's just the time that you develop humor, but I was very interested in being a larrikin early on afterwards. And I think that was just that was like that thing of like, let's not talk about stuff.
Like a defense mechanism?
Totally. And so you become a banterer, you know, and you just would prefer to banter than talk. And then at some point, you know, you make the switch, because I'm all about talking now. Like, as in like talking properly. That's the only conversation I want to have with people now. It's like, I mean, there's time for fun, but I would rather just talk to people about real stuff and make progress on my understanding of them and their understanding of me, and, you know, the real stuff, like what people want out of life, what's people's motivations, like how are they actually doing? Like, Scott, how are you doing? Like, are you doing well?
Yeah, actually. A while ago, I wasn't doing too well. I feel like I really turned a corner very recently. Whose podcast is this, Jeremy?
Well, look, I've been wanting to float this idea with you, as well as that we turn the podcast around on you, Scott. So,
you bastard.
because, I mean, that is how you're doing, and that is important, because now you have you've got a more free headspace now, right? Like, and you know now.
You probably have, because we all kind of go through this. As an adult, when there are people in your life with mental illness, do you feel like you are equipped or especially aware of trying to reach out to people like that?
Yeah, I think I'm the reach out king sometimes, maybe too much. So, you know, was it Jeff Goldblum was the pull out king? I'm the reach out king. If people are close enough to my circle, I usually, and I find out that they're going through some tough times, I will just offer. I won't offer what everybody else offers. Everybody's like, oh, we're just here to talk. And we can talk if you want. But I usually just say, hey, like, I acknowledge my own journey. And then I'm just like, yoga's been very helpful for me. If you'd like to come along to a class, I'll take you. And that's sometimes people get back to me a year later after the offer. And like, okay, I'm ready to take you up on this offer now. I'd like to try this. But it's just good letting people know that, like, one, you understand a variation of what they're going through. Two, you have a solution or a helpful thing that they may not have considered. And three, that it's not you going too much out of your way, because people feel like they don't want to be a burden on people sometimes too. So it's like, I'm going to be going to yoga anyway. These are the days that I go. If you want to join me, come along. I'd love to have company. And that's all it is.
Do you have to kind of avoid framing it in terms of, I am reaching out to you?
I think that once people kind of have expressed that they are struggling, I think it's okay. It's not like making an observation of somebody and being like, I think that person's sad. I'm going to go talk to them. I'm going to assume. But when they've actually explicitly said it, I think that point people are open to it.
Well, what about, but when people haven't acknowledged it openly yet, if you get the feeling from being in their life that they're going through some hard times, what can you do in that situation?
Well, that's a tougher one. You got to kind of like make yoga look like a social outing that's fun. And it is. No, but I think in those situations, it's a lot harder to help, because I guess everybody wants to maintain the PR that they're doing very well. And that's a hard thing to want to break.
I guess you do, but you also, sometimes you feel like to put across that you're also a multifaceted person, you also have to show a bit of vulnerability sometimes.
Yes.
And mostly these days, like, this is just online. And it could just be in the form of a comment of, I was having a shitty time. Here's a sunrise. Isn't this awesome? Amusing comment.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes. It's a hard one to read into too, is, like, without knowing someone very well, it's very hard to gauge, because that kind of like epicness of a post could be like farming. It might not even be based in a solid thing, or it could be based in something very solid and very real, and somebody needs to address and help where they can. And that's really tough. I guess you pick and choose moments and people that resonate with you, that you think that will be receptive to, or at least, if not receptive to, thankful that somebody messaged them saying they care. Yeah.
After your father died, did you kind of go looking consciously or subconsciously for a father figure, like a male role model?
I was very fortunate that, I guess, somebody who would become my mother's partner of like 17 years or so stepped into our lives, like maybe with a year after or something. So there was, I guess, access to a stepfather kind of figure for a period of time, which was really helpful, I feel. Yeah, it's just very impossible to ever replace your father, but it's very good to have some kind of just another role model, I guess, in some ways. My mom's just really great, though. She's like so full of person that she could really account for two parents, though. So, yeah, I think that she's all credit to her. She's just, yeah, she did good.
You've been in a long-term relationship for a while. Have you thought about becoming a parent yourself?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's definitely something I want in my life in the next few years. With the changing of, priorities and motivation in life, it kind of allows that to be a thing in your life that you have space for at some point too, because, it's infinitely fun. I feel like you could just do music forever. And the ideas, and just like related ideas, I think you could just do that forever. And I'm sure I could, because all the new ideas excite me so much. But I feel like, in a lot of ways, my life is heading to a calmer and simpler place where I have time to, have and raise children, I guess, which is crazy.
Have you thought about what kind of father you would be?
Look, I think everybody thinks that they're going to be the fun dad, the cool dad. But, as generations go, us in Gen Y, we won't be cool forever. We think we know what cool is. We think we understand memes, but there'll be super memes that we kind of get our heads around, and that's going to be troublesome. And at some point the kid's going to be like, you don't understand me, Dad. And I'll be like, I don't. But I'm here for you. And they'll be like, you know what? That's all that matters. And I'll be like, sure is. And then we'll be cool.
Did you have a second prepared topic you wanted to talk about?
I feel like we covered a lot of bases here, but it might give you content to crop and cut. What else I have on there? I guess the other ones I had were like, we kind of inadvertently covered them, which is
fair
exercise and motivation.
That happens a fair bit, actually.
Yeah.
Like the things I want to talk to guests about are the things they want to talk about.
Yeah, classic. Yeah, I had exercise and motivation down as the other things, and like changing motivation as time goes on, which we really did cover.
Oh, well then, did you have a life hack?
You know what? I actually don't have a life hack because I know the theory behind, you know the life hack that allows you to live your optimal life. It's obvious. We all know it. You get a little bit of exercise, a little bit of sunshine every day. You eat right. You go to bed and you maintain that good circadian rhythm. You do things in life that are fulfilling for you. And then you've built that happy life, or you've helped yourself get closer to the happy life. But a life hack that simplifies that, I do not have. I do, however, eat the same food for breakfast every day. And that can be a life hack in itself because you don't have to think about breakfast then. And oftentimes breakfast is the hardest meal to have to think about because, you're getting ready for work. You're getting out of that house as quick as you can. And you want a meal that kind of maybe covers all bases. I don't know. I don't know how many of the bases that you want to cover with breakfast this one covers. I have banana pancakes every day. It's 1 banana. That's 3 eggs. That's a little bit of coconut oil in the pan. And that's it. That's all that's in them. But they're delicious. They taste like normal pancakes, but, they're guilt-free. Well, they're not guilt-free if you're a vegan. They're guilt-free if you're a vegetarian. And they're guilt-free, if you're trying to avoid the, processed sugars and, processed flours or whatever else.
I also eat the same thing for breakfast every day, actually also lunch and usually dinner.
Oh, well, that's good. I like that kind of rhythm.
Because I hate cooking, so I just cook up a big bunch of stuff every Sunday and freeze it.
Yes.
But I recently had like a mini life hack, not something that is going to tie my entire life together, but that helps establish or helps me make a change to my morning ritual.
Yeah.
My mornings are the most routine parts of my day. Like you can set my mornings by clockwork, getting up, making lunch, exercising, showering, making breakfast, out the door. But recently it's occurred to me I can save time because I have 3 boiled eggs for breakfast as well as a bowl of muesli and a banana. So it used to be I would have my shower, then go boil the eggs, make the rest of breakfast. But it's occurred to me recently I can set the eggs on the boil while I have my shower.
Yes.
Save time. Put it on a low heat, which is, a better way to cook apparently for eggs. Like doesn't destroy much vitamin A or whatever.
Yep.
And they're ready when I get out of the shower. So it gives me an extra 7 minutes or whatever to read the news on my phone.
Bonus time. Yeah.
But because my bedroom and the shower are at the opposite end of the house to the kitchen, I'd find I would always forget I was forgetting to put the eggs on because my routine was so set. So what I did, Jeremy, is I took one of my egg cups from where it was waiting on the plate on the stove and I put it on my bed. So when I finished exercising, en route to the shower, I would see the egg cup on my bed.
Oh, yes.
Then remember, take it to the kitchen, put the eggs on the boil, then have a shower.
That's brilliant.
Do you have any super technical hacks like that you use to remember things?
No, I don't think so. I should. I don't. Though I'm really meticulous for not spacing on things. I mean, sometimes if I just didn't do something that I was supposed to do, I'll be like, oh, sorry, I spaced on this. I didn't actually space on it. I was just avoiding doing it, which is very unfortunate. But generally I'm quite meticulous in not dropping the ball on even those kind of things. But I'm with you on the same meals for most meals though. It's a good routine. As long as they're kind of balanced, they're covering all the food groups.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to play a song, Jeremy?
Yeah. You know what? I just sporadically, maybe I'll find a guitar around here on your wall of 7 guitars and play a song.
All right, I'll get you set up.
Sweet.
So after the interview, Jeremy was tuning up one of my acoustic guitars to play when Kellie Lloyd knocked on the door. She came by to borrow my bass amp because her band Scream Theatre were playing a gig just around the corner at Sonic Sherpa Records here in Stones Corner. The recording sounds different for this part because although the microphones were left on, they weren't pointed at the people who were talking and they weren't meant to pick up the sound of the entire room. So that's that. Here's Kellie. I do, yes. I have a guest here you may know.
Oh yeah, what up? Yeah, you didn't think you'd see this guy here, but now you have.
I haven't seen you in ages. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. I haven't given you a hug, have I?
Hello. We were just recording a podcast together.
Oh, sorry.
No,
That's fine. We finished the talking, we were just going to play a song.
Oh, cool. I haven't listened to your podcast yet. I've got, I totally am addicted to podcasts at the moment, and I'm behind on, I listened to this one called My Favourite Murder, which is a murder podcast.
Yeah. I've heard that the hosts of that on another podcast. They sound really fun.
They're hilarious,
Yeah.
and I love true crime and stuff, so I'm really behind on them. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, I've got a line of all these things I've got to catch up on, and then I'm gonna slot yours right in there, and I'm just gonna do all of it at once.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be a bit more of a backlog then.
Yeah, well, I get through them pretty quick, so I reckon it'll be a couple of weeks.
I have a really skewed kind of idea of how many podcasts people listen to, because I listen to podcasts all day at work.
Yeah, right.
So that's 5-6 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I go through the
It's a
What's your
podcast
job?
review.
Yeah.
I catalogue books for a wholesaler.
Oh,
so
okay, right.
sitting at a computer, books. But
Yeah.
it's got to the point where I was getting super bored with just doing that, and so this kind of fills up more mental space.
Yeah.
Which is good. I probably would have quit years ago if I couldn't do
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be a good way to pass the time. I have to take phone calls and do a lot of thinking and stuff, so I can't. I'll go to work and listen to a podcast and then turn it off, and then I don't get back to it until I leave.
Yeah.
And I can't listen to them when I go to bed at night because they'll keep me awake and I'll get all fidgety and weird.
Yeah.
My legs get all funny. I get crazy legs when I can't listen to music because I listen to the lyrics or I'll fixate on something, and podcasts, I just listen and it's too stimulating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard you recently on Sayers one though. It was good.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Sayers one's funny. It's, I didn't know I was gonna get shrunk. Sit on my couch and tell me about your childhood. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think that's great. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's good. It's a great podcast. I really like it. She's very amiable. You wanna just talk, because I know her really well, and everybody's on there knows her really well too.
Yeah.
So when she gets to people where she doesn't know them very well, it'll be interesting how. Wowzers! All right, I'm late. I gotta go.
What do you take?
I love your
What's
little.
going on?
I'm going to Sonic Sherpa.
Oh, sweet.
Is that heavy?
A little.
I could probably manage it. I'm a tough guy. Okay, that's alright. Here, let me take this. You guys get back to your thing.
Well, actually, I was going to say, can we have a sun break for 2 minutes? Just so
Yeah,
we can get back up
absolutely.
here?
Sun break.
I cool down too quick.
It's a beautiful day today. It's absolutely gorgeous. There you are.
I'll get the door.
So, how do you want me to get this back to you? And should I just lock it in?
So Jeremy and I went out to have a bit of a sunbreak because, much like Superman, Jeremy Neale draws his musical powers from the rays of the Earth's sun. And then he played a song which sounded a little something like this.
All right, Jeremy, what do you want to play us a song? What are you going to play for us?
I'd love to play this song. This song is a song all the way back from 2014. The song is called Ramona, initially released by Velociraptor. These days, one of my favorite songs to play acoustically. So,
Take it away.
Ramona, I told you, well, I can't sit next to you in a cinema when you're texting other guys. And I thought I knew you, but baby, you make me so blue. Oh, 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 oh. My baby used to be my baby, so sweet, and my baby used to be my baby, my baby. Hi, I call the Maryland, my Ramona Mary, so that's like a wind. I still remember when Ramona, I told you, well, I am now scared of you, and I won't write, and I won't call. I thought I knew you, but baby, you make me so blue. Oh, 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 oh. My baby used to be my baby, so sweet, and my baby used to be my baby. Why, baby? I call the mirror when my Ramona mirrors so oh, that's like a when I still remember when she was my girl, and 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 Ramona, I told you. I call the mirror when my Ramona mirrors so oh, that's like a when I still remember when I call the mirror when my Ramona mirrors so oh, that's like a when I still remember when my girl, 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 my girl.
Thanks, Jezza.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
You can find Jeremy's music all over the place online. He has his flagship solo project that he does under his own name, and he's also been in the bands including Velociraptor, Teen Sensations, Tiger Beams, Running Gun Sound, The Strange Attractors, Mount Augustus. Look, the list goes on. He's been in a metric fuck ton of bands, and many of them still have music up online on Spotify, on Bandcamp, probably MySpace, a few of them. He's been at this a long while. Jeremy's due to have some new solo stuff coming out very soon, including a new album that somehow involves a giant purple cartoon Tyrannosaurus called T-Rex, who's also a billionaire. I don't know what it's about, to be honest, but check it out. If you heard all the suicide talk and you need to talk to someone yourself, there are a bunch of services you can access, including Beyond Blue, Lifeline, Queensland Aid Council, Q Life, Kids Helpline, Suicide Callback Service, and the LGBT Hotline. Do please talk to someone if you need to talk to someone. Stay safe. The first podcast that I started, Only Talking Sense, I always meant to get back to that. I may still at some point. I recorded 5 episodes in the end. I finished 3 of them, broadcast 2 on my radio show on 4ZZZ in edited form. It was a much more ambitious project editing-wise than this, because I was going to include songs and everything. It was really about creating an oral history of Brisbane music. I didn't get super far, obviously, but I do feel the 5 conversations I recorded were pretty good. They were really long form. I may make those available at some point if you're interested in hearing them. If you're interested in dredging up episodes of a podcast I started in 2013, hit me up on Gimme Empathy podcast@gmail.com or on the Gimme Empathy Facebook page. Do share and like and subscribe and leave comments and reviews on iTunes and all those things that good podcast listeners do if you're so inclined. I'm going to go to bed now and rest my voice, and hopefully next week it won't sound awful again. Until next time, stay vital.